When you've been to enough World Cups and you've been to enough Sundays and you've played in a lot of finals, it becomes just a regular thing. And pressure is just something that's made up in your head. And I think that's why people say that World Cup's just another tournament, because it's not. The last tournament of the year, it's you either putting the staple on the season or just quickly being forgot about. And it's how you end the season. And for Impact, we've started so well this year and kind of teetered down. I think going off Chicago with the performance that we had as a team, I think it's actually good timing if you're going to have a performance like that, because it humbled us and it reminded us we have to keep working. We have to keep working harder than we did at the start of the year. And there's no better time than now to have that wake-up call going into Cup.
Welcome to Go Sports Live. I'm Matty Marshall. Got Quinn Nadu here from IconicPaintball.com coming out with the Iconic Paintball Awards post-World Cup. So we got a decent amount to discuss today here, Quinn. We're going to talk about the storylines heading into World Cup. We're going to be talking about these awards. And this year has been madness. 3 different teams have won the first 3 events, but there's all these like compelling subplots and all these crazy stories. We've talked, you know, I've talked about this offline quite a bit. I know you've been making the podcast rounds too, and I just love that you're getting the conversation, man. You're a great maven in the game. You're definitely very knowledgeable when it comes to these players and teams. I was going to say I appreciate the nod in the top 50, players of all time. Thank you so much. I don't agree with you at all, actually, though. Not with where you put everyone else. I don't think I should have been as high as I was, but you know, to each their own, brother. You know what I'm saying? So I do appreciate that. But yeah, that's maybe we could start out there, because I feel like that was a little controversial just because you put, and this has been touched on a little bit already, but I just thought it was interesting, and maybe this would be a little segue in. But when I read that, man, I was like, dude, this guy knows his stuff. And you know, you obviously have spent a lot of time playing this game, but also, you know, consuming it as a fan, and you are very knowledgeable. So that's why, you know, after listening to you talk a bit, I was like, we got to get this dude on the show. I got to talk to this guy. And I really love what you're doing with Iconic Paintball. That we always almost called excessive iconic, which is, so I just love that you named it that. I think it was, you know, it's a really cool thing. So, but yeah, maybe we'll start there. You know, how did you kind of come up with that? I mean, it's not, obviously it's okay, let's do a list of the greatest players, but when did you get a wild hair up your ass to take that on? Because that's a massive amount of work. And I know you caught a little flack for that.
Yeah, so I appreciate everything you said. Thank you for kind of recognizing what I've been doing. But yeah, with the 50 greatest players, it was really just about trying to touch into all the different great players from the eras of paintball. One thing that I've always said has been a shame with the sport is when you look back at the history, it's really like a verbal and word of mouth type of history in this game to an extent. It was really like you had to be there type of stuff to know these great players throughout, you know, the not 80s, 90s, the 2000s. So the list was really about just trying to give a little piece of every one of these players that was A, really important to me as I came up through the game, and then B, guys that really put their mark on the sport and kind of helped set it in the direction that it's in today. I mean, someone like you is a great example on that list. I mean, obviously, everyone knows Matty Marshall. Everyone knows all the awesome stuff you've done. They've seen you as a commentator. But, you know, then you have a guy on the list, that someone might not really know anything about. Like, again, Marcus was always a big one when I did my first big story with him. Or even if you're going back to, like, the older guys from the 80s, like Fred Schultz, who really helped bring paintball into the mainstream. These are guys that kids these days that start playing have no idea who these people even were. That's why I thought it was important just to get the conversation started and have these people get talked about again and kind of touch into all the amazing things they did for the sport.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. You know, I mean, you have a situation where, yeah, I mean, there is written word out there. You had these paintball magazines, but a lot of them just don't exist anymore, and so that's kind of a frustrating situation if you're a fan. I mean, I wrote for a lot of those magazines, and you know, and then you have websites, and I mean, you and I could spend a lot of time kind of just discussing that situation in and of itself. But that being said, I mean, this is why, you know, and it's like Malcolm, guys, if you haven't read Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, it's a fascinating book. And in it, he talks about the 3 specific types of human beings that are fundamental to anything becoming a thing. And one of those things that he talks about, one of those types of humans, is a maven. And the Maven is like, everyone has their car guy. Everyone has their, their football guy, the guy that's like, all right, you getting in the league this year? All right. And he wants to nerd out about, the intricacies of like who the new quarterbacks coming into the league are and, what he thinks their rating should be on that. And, just all that sort of stuff. I mean, everyone has their golf guy. Everyone has, but in paintballs, some people have their paintball guy. And, guys like you and I, we're paintball mavens. We just love this stuff and we love consuming information about this sort of stuff. And so, yeah, the death of the magazine as a thing is both a concept rife with possible discussion through, the changing of the guard when it comes to, the technology as far as journalism is concerned, but then also, that has a direct effect on the information that gets disseminated to the world, and then that was why when we saw that kind of go down, it was very frustrating to have written for Paint Magazine. I'm glad that Famous came out and Faceful and like all these cool magazines, but then as they started to kind of go away and you could see things go online, it was like, okay, well, how do we make this sustainable, right? Like that's sustainability is obviously a key word for humankind in general. It's become a buzzword, but then it's also a very potent thing to kind of keep this information going forward. So when I see a guy like you come on that has taken and absorbed all that information from when we did have magazines and then comes out with something like Iconic Paintball, I just think it's really cool. And so with the awards that you're going to do, we've done some awards in the past as well too. It's a lot of work to do. And I think it's really cool how you're doing it. So we're going to be discussing some of those today and then the storylines heading into Cup. But yeah, man, like just, can you maybe talk about like your point of passion and like why you love this game so much? Because it's obvious that you really love the game of paintball and are fascinated by the people that play it. That's kindred spirit type stuff for me because, same. But so like, what is it about the game that compels you to be this into it?
So to be honest, like, I've played for going on 2 decades now, but really the one thing that always tied my passion into this game, whether, the different phases I went through where I quit the sport, came back in, the one thing that really always tethered me to it was the old media. Like I have a huge magazine, a huge DVD and VHS collection of all the old stuff. And I would always find myself, whether I was like right in the mix of playing national events and really active in paintball, or like I haven't picked up a gun in 2 years, I always found myself drawn back to like reading old paint magazines or PB2X stuff, or watching like an old Trauma Head video. And that kind of really drives my passion in the game, is kind of just, again, the storytelling with it. Like I can always remember reading your articles when I was like a kid, picking up the new paint magazine and just being like so interested in like the kind of weird little behind the scenes stuff that you never essentially get to see, because a lot of paintball is just the on the field stuff and that's it in media. And that's one thing I always thought you did really great, was you were really good at telling the stories of beyond the field. And really, to me, that's a big passion. I love to know the stories of all these guys beyond just what they do on the paintball field. There's so many guys who are just, we see them as the elite players, during their pro careers. Then you learn this guy has like a huge expertise in some like really weird kind of off the wall type of thing. And then he starts talking about that. You really get to the defining things of what made him as a player. But yeah, honestly, the passion for it to me always has come from the media. And that's why I was so excited to be able to kind of have like an outlet where I could just write about the things that mattered to me. I actually talked about this idea a lot with Alex Frazier before I decided to do it. And that was really a big thing I always said to him, was like, I don't care whether if one person reads this or a million. I just want to know, for me, this story's out there and I can go back and read it one day and it's available. Because like you said, the biggest shame with the magazine era is you have thousands of awesome stories throughout the years from all of these different great personalities. And it's just one of those things that's lost to time now. Because even like your partner Rich on the Go Sports live commentary stuff, like he wrote a lot of really cool stuff for different magazines, and the way he wrote it with like the attitude of like looking at it from the player's perspective of like, when are we going to get our moment type of stuff, that was always really interesting to me as well. And I just think it's a shame those stories are lost. And that's why I'm kind of trying to bring them back and kind of spark that kind of feel again in the game, where it's goes beyond just watching on the field or playing on the field. There's a little bit more to it. That's what I'm kind of focusing my passion on.
Well, yeah, I mean, it takes people that are passionate about continuing to bring the narrative forward, because, there's what happened, and then that's one story. It's like there's three different truths. There's your truth, there's that person's truth, and then there's the ultimate truth. So it's a kind of similar situation. Like, so a thing happens, a paintball tournament, a paintball player's big move or whatever it is, and then that thing happens. But then, did we capture it? If we captured
Yeah.
it, then it's what continues to get transferred down the line. And because people will always ask me like, "Oh, what's the greatest game you've ever seen, or the greatest move, or all that?" But some of the greatest moves I ever saw existed in or it does currently exist in Oblivion, or it only very soon, uh, you know, uh, from like a galactic times perspective, will exist in Oblivion, because it's just in my mind, and I watch the move, and then it's the guy, John Richardson pull off a crazy move in the woods or something, and I was like, oh my god, that dude just ran through and shot 7 guys. There's no cameras around. It's 1997, but that happened. I saw it. He lived it. The dudes he shot and the refs there saw it, and then that's it. It's like it's just one of those things that just so that was one of
Yeah,
my
and
big
honestly,
passions
to
with the web.
me,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
oh, sorry. To me, that's like a really big thing with me, like with what you guys do. I think Ghost Sports is so, so good at capturing everything that happens. But I'm, like I said, with Iconic, I always look at like the older stuff, especially like what you're talking about. I just like to write about the little things of an event. Like, for instance, you guys covered everything with the Windy City Major, like perfect. I mean, you didn't miss anything, everything's there. That's why when I kind of looked at how do I want to write about a recap for this, I looked at like Dynasty specifically. I'm like, I want to talk about the things that no one gets to see on the field, the stuff that, obviously you can have 500 people in the pits watching Dynasty, like what the conversations are going on at dinners, things like that. And that's big for me because I think that stuff matters to me. And I try to write it in a way to say, like, hey, Alex, what you did mattered. I thought it was important. I want to make sure it lives on in some way that people can, read it beyond what we get to see on the screen.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, and there's levels to things, right? And so
Yeah.
there's what goes on the field, but as all the great documentaries that people have watched, I mean, some of the most compelling moments are the things that weren't happening on the field, and that just that what happens on the field defines all of these other moments. It defines their trajectories. If you win or lose, how hard are you going to work? Who are you going to try to pick up to work with to try to make that a better day, make the next day a better day, the next tournament a better tournament. So there is a lot there. But Quinn, you and I could definitely just go hardcore here and discuss about like the past of paintball media and like what we're doing currently. But we do need to transition to talk about some of the stuff that's happening here for Cup.
Yeah, for sure.
Not saying we shouldn't have that conversation. Like, I don't want to, nip this one in the bud here when it could be super dope. But that being said, we only have about an hour to work with to get into, I feel, talk about compelling narratives. I mean, there's a lot of compelling narratives going down this year. I mean, just the race and let's just start with this. And again, we are going to be discussing some of the potential nominees. I do want to discuss the series title race right out the gate here, just because I feel
Yeah, for
that's
sure.
one of the more the compelling meta narratives, like the big overarching narrative that's going down. One of the biggest things that will happen at Cup, because winning the series title is of utmost importance. But just real quick, if we could just go through, what are the iconic, the certain categories that we have as far as what we're going to be discussing in a little bit here.
Yeah, so category wise, I kind of try to be fairly encompassing with everything. Because again, a big importance for me with the awards was, recognizing the huge kind of like iconic best in the world guys there are. But I mean, you've seen it over the years through all the hundreds and thousands of hours of games you've watched. There's guys on these kind of lesser teams that might not always be getting on the podium, but they just have guys that are really, really good at, they are elite snake player or an elite Dorito player, whatever it might be. So the kind of the way I tried to break it down is the big award is the icon of the year, which is essentially going to be just the best player from the season, like the true MVP of the entire NXL year. And we're going to look at all 4 events for that. And then kind of something different I'm going in a direction is an offensive and defensive player of the year award. I really felt something like that is a bit more relatable to kind of how like the rest of professional sports kind of looks at their games. And really, when you come down to it with paintball, it is pretty clear at any given game you watch, there's certainly guys that are offensive, primarily guys like someone like a Keith Brown or, like a Dalton Vanderbilt, guys like that. And then you certainly have people that are easily kind of defensive guys, where like Marcelo, Nick Sloviak, guys like that, who tend to hold the guard in a way to say it. And then, we'll obviously look at all the traditional stuff like the best snake player, the best Dorito player, move of the year, team of the year. And then we kind of get into some other stuff to highlight the younger guys. We're going to look at like breakout teams and breakout players that kind of recognizes these guys or teams that came into the season a little under the radar and have really blown up. And I mean, there's a lot of guys like that, but I mean, a guy like Danny Schoenauer is a great example. Or I mean, even someone like Harrison to an extent, where he kind of came in and really has become like an elite player this season and really has kind of shown who he is. And then of course, all the other, kind of straightforward ones, coach of the year, those kind of things. But a big thing with me with these awards too is I kind of also wanted to bring a community aspect in the whole thing, just because I feel like outside of just the guys on the field, like the pro players, there is a lot of people that go into these storylines of making these great teams. Whether that's guys innovating new products that are coming out and, giving teams an edge on the field, whether you're talking about something as simple as like the creator of the year, which is another award I'm going to do that kind of touches in on these guys that are just creating great content, whether it's like podcasters, videographers, just people that are doing a great job at covering the game and just bringing more recognition to the sport. And then one thing I'm really excited about as well is we're going to do a supporter of the year. I mean, Maddie, you know this because you were a pro player, forever. There are so many guys that are just utterly critical to a pro team's success, and they just never get talked about. And that's one thing I always look at where I'm like, it's such a shame that you have a guy like Victor Gamboa with Dynasty, who is like,
Yeah, for sure.
he's the anything and everything guy for that team that just, he's the glue that pulls everything together. He makes sure everything's where it needs to be. Everything's happening when it's supposed to happen. And I feel like guys like that are super important. I mean, even if you look at a team like Heat, for instance, I mean, people talk about Sarge all the time, but his wife is huge to the success of that team and keeping everyone on the same page, making sure everyone's emotions are kept in check and everyone has a unified goal throughout the Heat organization. So for me, that's a really big award as well. But I don't know if you kind of want to jump right into stuff. I mean, like, say we're talking icon of the year. I mean, who are you liking so far this season?
Man, again, it's still, and it's like the conversation we had offline, dude. It's really hard for me. Like, we could talk about potentials, but because Cup is so weighted, if we're gonna talk about like the main guy for the year, as far as the weight that they put, the gravity, you could say, that really kind of dictated the trajectory of the program that this guy's associated with. It really has so much to come down to what happens at World Cup. We're doing a lot of these interviews for 4 Sundays, and we've been, we did this past week, and just kind of thinking on the importance of World Cup and it's like paintball cliche, it's in so many documentaries over the years. Because man, I've been going to every World Cup since 1994. So when I was 16, and it's like. And it's you can't overstate the importance of World Cup as a tournament. It's just when I throw the question to guys like, people that that say, because they're like, the title 4 Sundays. I'm like, dude, to be honest, that's all that matters. That's all anyone gives a shit about is those 4 24-hour periods. And specifically what happens on that field, because your entire life as a pro paintball player is completely dictated by now. It used to be 5 days a year, but now 4 days a year. And then with World Cup, specifically that one day, what happens on Sunday at World Cup. So as far as like icon of the year, man, like, I don't know, that could drastically change depending on, obviously currently you have, to me, it's like icon, it's like overall MVP, right? Like golden gun type situation. Mm-hmm. And it's like, who is the most important guy for their squad? And we have 3 MVP award winners as it stands through 3 events. You have Alex Goldman for Edmonton Impact, you have Konstantin Fedorov for Houston Heat, and then you have Alex Frazier for San Diego Dynasty. But heading into Cup, depending on what happens, even just the nominees for that could potentially change, because you have so many teams that are kind of like on the bubble. I mean, let's take a team like Tampa Bay Damage, right? Tampa Bay Damage has taken 2, if we could just, this kind of, you asking me the question about icon of the year kind of leads us into this World Cup conversation, because World Cup is so important, and it is the hinge upon which the entire year, kind of goes, that weighs upon. So, like, let's just take Damage to start the conversation. Damage took 3rd at the first event, and then 2 11th place finishes in a row. Now, in some universe, if you do believe that the universe is infinite and all these different microscopic decisions that we make kind of change things to create another universe, that's some crazy metaphysical, conversation for us to have maybe, on another day over beers. But if you, let's just say that that's a possibility, there is some universe out there where Damage wins World Cup. And I don't even think it's like, a million and one. Like I think Damage has a legit chance. Also, apparently the rumor come around the pipeline is no John Woodley for Tampa Bay Damage. It wasn't working out with John. This is the rumor that I heard. And so they're kind of refining their lineup a little bit. And they have some veterans that are really pissed off for greatness right now, really frustrated with 2 11th place finishes. And again, a third to start the year. And when you go man to man with Tampa Bay Damage, I mean, that's a team that it would not surprise me if they came out and blazed a trail and won World Cup. So, we're talking about icon of the year. I don't know if anyone could steal it on Tampa Bay Damage, but I feel that if they did have a chance to win World Cup, I would have to go back and kind of look at their performances with a little bit more of a microscopic lens to see if at least somebody deserves. And then also, like, what type of performance are we talking about? Again, I'm just kind of bringing up things to stimulate some sort of conversation here, because this is the type of conversation you and I would be having on the phone anyway, to be discussing this stuff post World Cup. But if, let's just say that, like, Tampa Bay Damage has had some, again, rough performances to take 2 11th place finishes in a row, but there's been a couple guys that have been holding it down a little bit on offense. Let's just say Agent Smith comes down. He's been pretty consistent for them. If he comes out and literally just like gets the MVP, slaughters everybody, and then has Damage save their year by winning World Cup, like, does he win Icon of the Year? I don't know, but I feel like he would deserve to get on the nomination, or, as a nominee for it. So again, it's just
that actually is what makes this year's storylines really interesting. Especially because I don't know how you feel about it. I feel like in a lot of previous seasons, it's always been really evident by like the second or third event. You're like, okay, this is the clear top team to me. And like, this guy is just playing out of his mind. Like, for instance, like this year started off like right away after seeing event one. I'm like, okay, Alex Goldman is just by a mile going to be the best player of the season this year. But then I just felt like right after that, it was like, throw everything out. And just every event since has just been like, I mean, last event's a perfect example. I mean, look at Frazier. He just comes out of nowhere, puts up like 65 kills and just utterly dominates an event. And I mean, that's just something like we haven't seen that in years in NXL, where just someone has come out after, a couple seasons of just kind of being, obviously still very good, but just kind of under the radar. And I think, like what you're saying, that's what makes the conversation for the best player kind of really down to the wire for me. I mean, because like you said, say we go out and, like Ryan or Alex has a poor last event, and someone, even like Rainey or something just kind of has a really top level event where he's just killing people off the back line. I mean, all of a sudden you're thinking, that changes the conversation. Or like you're saying with Brian Smith, super consistent all year, has been kind of the rock of Damage. That's someone who could just come out of the woodworks at World Cup if he wins it. So I certainly think Cup weighs a lot on it. And especially too, I mean, you have guys like Fedorov. I mean, he wasn't around for the first event. So how do you weigh a guy like that against the rest of the season for guys that played all 4 events? You know what I mean?
That's a really good point, Quinn, because I was thinking that same thing too with Fedorov. I'm like, okay, well, he was so badass and so dominant that he wins the MVP, murdering people on the D side for Houston Heat in a redemptive win after Heat doesn't even make Sunday without him, and at the first event, so but again, just in general, the narratives dude, again, like, I've been following the game since 1994. I've been doing it professionally for a long time now, and I've never seen it this competitive, man. I know the haters are like, oh, these, got the top teams and they just shit on all these other teams, and I'm like, I don't know, bro. Have you watched a lot of paintball the past 2 seasons? Because that's not always the case. Again, I'm not, I was level going to win.
If you just look at if you look at the Windy City Major, I mean, if you just take the Chicago event, in a microcosm by itself, I mean, Danny Schoenhauer is one of the best players in the NXL right now, just looking at that one event. So that's why, even like you said, when these guys come out and say like, oh, these bottom end teams are, garbage, they shouldn't be in the pro division, I'm thinking, LVL just clearly showed, they don't belong in that conversation at the bottom anymore. I mean, they had, guys come out and have dominant events. And even like we're talking now, if LVL comes out to Cup and they're they're in the finals or the consolation finals, I mean, you have to start talking about some of these guys for these awards.
100%. Not only that, but I would be if let's just say level goes deep on site. Again, these are Quinn, we're just bullshitting here, just throwing some stuff out there, just all hypotheticals. But I'm just saying, I'm just gonna paint a cool, weird ass picture here. Not saying it's gonna happen. Level goes and makes it into the semifinals at Cup. Because look, I'm not saying that's gonna I'm not betting on that. I am a betting man. I'm willing to accept certain bets. But that would be, I need some odds on that one because it's going to be hard for level. And we can get to brackets in a bit here. But if you look at the levels, the boys on levels performance, 20th and 19th at the first two events. That's trash, bro. That is trash. It's garbage. Do not deserve to be in the pro league at that point in time if that's what you're bringing. But if we start their story, or at least like end a chapter, start a new chapter at the last game at the second event, and then start it from there. They beat Houston Heat, and Heat goes on to win the second event. Then they beat the Outlaws by 6. They beat Impact by 1. They beat Damage by 5. And then they beat Revo by 1 to go undefeated through 5 games, undefeated at that event. They did get their asses kicked by San Antonio X Factor on Sunday by 6. But even with that 6-point loss, they still had a +7 at the last event for their plus minus, with 22 points for and 15 against. Excuse me. So,
yeah, and really that last event too. I've heard like 1,000 people say the same thing of like, oh, it was just the layout. It was a fast layout, so these lower skilled teams are going to win. Or I mean, not win, but that's why they did good as kind of like the reasoning. I highly disagree with that because if it was just that easy, why did Heat go out and just do it as simply as them? Why did, Damage go out and do it just as simply? Because they clearly have, much better rosters. I mean, Damage is a great example to go against the argument that it was just the layout. I mean, that layout, Keith Brown, you'd think, okay, he's just going to absolutely dominate. It's a fast snake. That wasn't the case. So that's why I think a lot of the haters on these young teams kind of emerging, I disagree with. But again, go on with your World Cup scenario.
No, I mean, I'm just saying, like, and you're right. It's super easy to be the dude on the beach that's watching, like, the little kid go out there and be like, you're not a surfer. Look at you, little bitch. Oh, you're going to go surf right now? Oh, yeah, good luck out there in them big-ass waves. Like, okay, like, that's just, so, it's just whatever, man. It's each their own. Some people just love to talk shit and watch the world burn, but I'm not one of those guys. And so, and I watch a lot of this stuff, and it is very interesting to see some of these younger teams' progressions. And with Level, seeing as how they had relegation and the demise of a dream on the table with their performance, I think that them, instead of doubling down on their mental stress and understanding that was what was at stake, because when, I was talking to Robbie and talking to Pando and any of the dudes on the team at all, I would say, dude, you guys really got to stop mind melding yourselves and just go out there and just play paintball, dude, because you guys are just going out and just over battling and second guessing yourselves. And, everyone's trying to, it's looking a bit ridiculous in the first 2 events. And then sure enough, they go out there and just kind of find this flow. So that's what I'm saying. If Level shows up and they end up having some badass event, and then I'm just saying, let's say they don't win. So then we have now a 4th different winner. So, and let's just say that Impact, Dynasty, and Heat, let's say they don't win it, right? Unless it's Infamous, but let's say if it's any other team, I mean, is that the team of the year? Then you and I and the other people that are trying to figure out these awards, we're gonna have like a really hard conversation. It's really hard to figure out the MVP when like multiple dudes are crushing it. It's really hard to figure out who the team of the year is going to be.
Sure.
Like, obviously, it's really easy to say, oh, okay, such and such team won the series title because somebody's got to win the series title. So it'd be very easy for us to give that award to the team that won the series title. But there's already an award for that, and that's the NXL series title. You earn that award. That's something you earn. This is a title, So we're kind of, as it's kind of like the baseball writers decide who gets into the Hall of Fame. So it's kind of one of those situations where we have to have a conversation, try to figure out, all right, well, again, just painting different pictures. If Level comes out and has some and makes it to the finals or does something insane, I don't know if they're ready for that. I don't think they are, to be honest. Guys on Level, I'm a big fan, but prove me wrong. just based on what we've seen in the past. It's just so hard on Sunday, especially at World Cup. But hey, the future is for you guys to write. Energy Elite, same situation there. I mean, Energy Elite, I feel kind of got a little like Level stole Energy Elite's thunder a bit. Both these teams lost in their first games on Sunday, but Energy Elite is actually sitting much better in the standings than Level is. I mean, Energy Elite sitting at 13th in front of the Ironman, in front of Uprising, in front of the Outlaws, Level, DMG, ML Kings, and AC Dallas. So Energy Elite sitting at 13th with a 15th to 15th, nothing to write home about there, and then a 7th. And so they finally make their first their first Sunday, but they don't get beat up by Dynasty as bad as Level gets beat up by X Factor. And though they did go 3-1 in the prelims in Chicago, I feel like Energy Elite deserves a little bit of baby bit of this conversation, because as far as like compelling teams of the year, just because I don't know again what they're going to do at World Cup.
Sure.
Same story there though, right? They just again, they go big at Cup, make it deep. Not saying they win, but could make it really interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, Energy Elite to me, I think next year especially, I think that's going to be a team that gets really scary really quickly. They kind of did the one thing that's really hard to do in pro paintball if you're kind of a lower level team, is they found the ability to basically retain essentially the same roster since they've gotten into the pro league. And obviously, I don't know how much you've talked to like Alan or anything, but all I hear from everybody is he is like just fire in his eyes, ready for this team to just kind of just take over the paintball world. And I think Alan, with his resources and his commitment to that roster, I think they're going to be a really scary team at Cup. And I think they're going to be really scary going into next future seasons for sure. Because, I mean, kind of like you said, too, LVL for sure had a good event at Chicago. But I think just by the eye test, you could see a lot of that was based on that really heavy aggression style they played. I mean, to an extent, Energy was still kind of playing like a fairly even kind of methodical style. They were doing well doing that. So I think they're kind of a scary dark horse, because they, like you said, their thunder kind of got stolen at Chicago, and the other pro teams might not really be looking at them with much fear right now. And I think that might bite some of them come World Cup.
Yeah, it is fun to watch them play because they got a bunch of dudes that are built like linebackers and love to push the issue. They're athletic big dudes. Not every guy on the team, but a large percentage of the guys that I keep saying their names because I'm like, who is this again? Oh, Bowen, and then I'm like, oh, who is this again? Oh, it's Geiger, Caleb Abel's not built like a linebacker, but I don't know, but some of those guys are pretty big. They're bigger guys. So it's kind of fun to watch those dudes run around.
Geiger, what you said, Geiger is a linebacker. Like, he's someone, if you see him in your gear, you're thinking like, okay, that guy's probably a back line guy. And then he just plays like anywhere he needs to on the field and just stuffs it.
Yeah.
So, I think they're scary because they kind of have that weird kind of secret athleticism.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know how they're bigger dudes. It's a team that I'm looking at and I'm thinking like, all right, if we got a bunch of tiny dudes on our team, that's not a team that I really want to get in a team fight with, because those are a bunch of dudes because the guys that aren't built like linebackers, some of them are closer over 6 foot tall, and they're a little bit more slender, but they got some size on that team is what I'm saying. And they do play an aggressive brand of paintball. So with an aggressive layout, and it does look like potentially, we'll see how all the shots end up. And I mean, it's still a little fresh. We got the full weekend of the layout coming out here, but early indications, potentially aggressive. We will see. But yeah, still a fascinating story. And Alan is absolutely, yes, I have talked to Alan, and he is a paintball patron. That guy is a successful business. He loves the game. He wants to pay people to play the game. So, hey guys, if you're a really good paintball player and you're a name and you want like a nice little cozy situation, I mean, obviously you're gonna have to work your ass off for the cozy situation, but like that, hey, that might be a call you want to take. Maybe you can go help them build something over there. It's just tough because if you want to get guys, having been in these conversations so many times over the years and helped guys through these conversations, because I get a lot of calls in the off season, typically where guys will be like, Maddie, I don't know exactly how this goes. I don't know, dudes are getting paid. What am I supposed to do in this situation? I'm like, well, okay, well, and then we have a conversation about it. But yeah, I mean, Alan loves this game, and he really does want to put enough resources into Energy Elite to make them a competent professional paintball team that can contend. So it was kind of cool to see them finally take a 7th place. So, that these are just kind of interesting, compelling stories about what's going on out there. And as far as icon of the year, oh man, it really depends on what happens at Cup, bro. Because if we have, look at the kind of the names in the past. So Dynasty's having another really huge year, coming off the World Cup
But they're
victory,
doing it in a
and they
really
also
interesting way. Like they're doing it in like a really like even way across the board. Like if you look at the events we've had so far, there's not really any guy where I'm like, okay, he's 100% the best guy across these three events. I mean, like every event, they've essentially just had a guy who's like he has just dominated that event for them. So like dynasties are really interesting kind of story of that because I mean, say they go into Cup, even if they win it, they might not necessarily have a guy that emerges in this icon of the year race just because they've been kind of sharing the ball in an easy way to say it. You know what I mean?
well, can we talk? Because we've had this conversation offline a bit. I think we should take it online, but I just feel that so just because defensive player of the year and the first name out of your mouth was Marcelo,
Mhm.
and he came up as an offensive phenom, and I told him this. I'm like, look, man, if you go back, if you rewatch all of those dynasty games that they played, it becomes blatantly apparent how important a guy like Marcelo is, or Ryan, when he's also playing as that
Yeah.
kind of safety valve type position, because you got guys on Dynasty that love to get after it. Mike Urena loves to get after it. I mean, he's also developing a lot of tact in his game, and he's also developing a creative ability to know when to go, know when not to go. I mean, he keeps getting better. I'm interested to see how good Mike Urena can be. He's already pretty damn good, but it would not surprise me if the next couple seasons we see Mike get an MVP just because of where his game's going. Then you got a Blake, same situation with Blake. Now we know Blake already, he won MVP in Europe before. We know how good Blake can be. Blake is also diversifying his game, but Mike likes to get after it. Blake likes to get after it. These guys get creative, they get aggressive. So they die occasionally early, and that's just part of having
Mm-hmm.
a weapon like that in your arsenal. It is inevitable. You play enough points, these guys are going to get shot occasionally early, sometimes more often than not. And then that puts a lot of pressure on the guys like Marcelo, Yosh, Ryan, these like consummate survivors. Dalton also likes to get after it too. And that's why they're able to do so well, is because they have these offensive weapons. So when you look at a guy like Marcelo, it is so important for San Diego Dynasty. And I'm so happy that they signed for Dynasty, just having never been on Dynasty, but watched their entire careers and played against them so many times
Mm-hmm.
and had so many close friends on that team. But yeah, Marcelo is so. I mean, he would be probably, at least as it stands right now, if we're talking about defensive guy, he'd be my first name on that list. But it would probably piss him off to no end to win that award, just because it's so frustrating to be like the offensive phenom guy and then have to be forced to play the defensive position, but play it so well that you and I are like, that was literally the first name out of your mouth. And then now after watching it and then rewatching it and rewatching it, all these different games and seeing all these guys in defensive positions. And there's a couple other names that we could talk about, but for that specific award. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, for
Marcelo would probably
Marcelo, to
be
me, like he's pretty much the takeaway guy for like defensive player of the year. I think at this point is going to have to be like just flat out stolen from him. I've wrote articles about how good I think he is. I talk about to everyone that wants to talk about it why I think he's one of the best players in the world. He is just so like utterly elite in the category of IQ and just holding the dynasty guard. I mean, I've watched like honestly, I watched thousands of hours of Marcelo playing over the
I know
years.
you have. Yeah.
If you just really dial in and watch this guy, like he is so critical to what Dynasty does. I mean, if you need a guy isolated and taken off the field, Marcelo will do that for you. If you need something just utterly shut off and make sure no one makes it through a zone, he's your guy. If everything goes to shit and it's him and Yosh left on the back line, he'll win you the game. For me at
One
least,
on
that's why I
ones
think
too.
Defensive Player of the Year is going to be. Yeah, just I mean, look at Chicago. I mean, they were getting their ass kicked the first 4 points against the ML Kings. He gets thrown into a one-on-one with Kyle Berry down what I think they were down 2-1 at the time or 3-1. Wins a crucial one-on-one and just
No,
completely turns the
it
match around for them. And arguably what could
it
have
must
been huge for their success in winning that.
100%. And that was the only, if you look at Dynasty performance that was kind of the only real like true adversity they really faced, because I don't really have a lot of adversity in that. I mean, even when I'm sitting there, we're working on this documentary, and I'm like, where's the drama here? I mean, you watch the NFL films, you watch 24/7 HBO, anybody that makes documentaries, it's like, okay, well, if this is sports, where's the drama? And that specific event, there wasn't a ton of drama for San Diego Dynasty because they were just that good. Their plus minus was 23. Heats was plus 24 at the second event, so slightly better, but barely. And it was just, and Heat lost the game. So Dynasty would let teams score points on them, but they just were so good at just being in control, and they really knew that layout well. And I mean, they battled through at least adversity, inner point adversity, not overall in the game, but that one situation they did have was, turning point for Marcelo. And then in the infamous game, similar situation, Marcelo lost a one-on-one to Greg Sewers early on in the match, and then wins another one in probably one of the most crucial moments in that game. So yeah, dude. But I'm just telling you, like, Marcelo would begrudgingly.
That's why I look at a
he
guy
would,
like him. He's like a 3-and-D guy to me, like an elite defensive guy, like the NBA say. He's the guy that, like, what you don't see on the field or on paper, he impacts that. Like, he's the kind of guy that Dynasty can do crazy shit with Blake or, Mikey, or, kind of let Alex do crazy shit like he did in Chicago. They can do that right now because they know, hey, if all of this fails miserably and all these guys get killed off the break, Marcelo and Ryan will figure shit out in the back line and save the game for us. And I think, to me, that's truly what a great defensive player is. He's a guy that you can say, we'll put you in, 3-on-5 all day and we'll feel good about you winning those for us.
Yeah, I think another guy that's in that category too. I totally agree with you. I'm just saying, and I love Marcel. He's a very good friend of mine, and I know he can play offense. But I'm just telling you, like, it's just in his career, he's kind of, it's the same with Ryan. Ryan has begrudgingly gone into this position. Some of these ones are begging to be a 2. They're like, oh, Maddie, I really want to diversify my game. I want to be a 2. I feel like I might be a little too like, they don't exactly say it this way all the time. I'm a little valuable to die, so I want to, make sure that I can start in the back and then I can start playing offense. And I'm like, you're the best dude on the team. We need you pushing the issue. I'm sorry. That's literally why you get paid to play paintball. Just do what you get paid to play this game for. But with Marcelo, he would take the defensive award of the year and he'd be like, oh, Quinn, thank you guys so much. Iconic Paintball is awesome. And he would then put the defensive award on his on his plaque and just be like, oh, great, I'm the best defensive player in paintball. This is just awesome. That's what I'm trying to tell Marcelo. I'm like, dude, you are so good at your position and such a fundamental part of Dynasty's success. Again, same with Ryan. Ryan has to play shitty spots sometimes too, that he doesn't want to play, that are very difficult to play. I mean, Marcelo's always playing the trash can. He's always playing that one spot that a lot of guys can shoot. He's engaged in a lot of gunfights. So if we can kind of transition this, because there's different guys on different teams that kind of play that role. I don't want to get too much time talking about the defensive guys, but it is but to guys like us, to me, that's one of the most interesting. To me, watching Dynasty play, what happens to Marcelo is one of the most interesting parts of that game, because I played that role. I know what the treachery that he has to, be a part of, and how difficult his situation is. Always engaging in gunfights, having to lock down lanes, having to keep the communication up, et cetera, et cetera. And to move that to some of these other teams is, I feel like one of those guys on a team that I feel is making a really solid run right now. I feel like the future is very bright for them because their business stuff's getting dialed. It's affording them the opportunity to try to, get into that next upper echelon of teams that can give guys deals enough to keep a solid roster, is Infamous. And when I look at a guy like Cody Minkowski, like, he's another Marcelo type guy for his squad. He keeps getting better every year, and he's a one-on-one champion. He shoots bodies on the break. He closes games out. I mean, a guy like Cody Minkowski is so fundamental to the success. But then also with Infamous, a guy that also is in that conversation on the same team, who I felt is having a hell of a year, is Cali Rudolph. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on Cali Rudolph and Cody Minkowski.
So yeah, Cody's a guy, like, I absolutely love his game. Again, kind of like you said, I'm always a guy that leans towards that kind of backline or defensive play, because I really think that's where the interesting kind of like weird little stuff of paintball that makes it cool comes from. Again, like not to go too deep in anyone, but if you're a one and like an elite guy, like LJ Parrish, Thomas Taylor, like I'm expecting you to go out. If you die 50% of the time, I expect that. But then you look at these defensive guys, like I'm expecting you to live the whole game. I'm expecting you to win every single gunfight you get into. I'm expecting you to always pull shit out of your ass. Like these are the guys that are like they really have to be good at everything. And Cody Mikowski for Infamous is huge. I mean, he's a guy off the break, probably one of the best guns in the game. If you need a spot shot off the break, he's your guy. I mean, you got to see it. We all got to see it at Windy City. It came down to one-on-ones there wasn't even a conversation. I was standing at the Infamous pits. It wasn't even a conversation. Cody just walked out on the field because he knows I'm the guy. I'm going on here and winning this damn point for us. And what's he do? Goes right out, mows him off the field, instantly wins the point. And to me, like, again, like you said, Callie's really interesting too, because he started his career as a little bit more of that 1-2 role. I mean, I'm maybe a little fuzzy, but from what I remember, Callie started on the excessive line kind of as like a one that first year he played with excessive. And, over the years, he's really, really refined his role to be like just this really elite backline player. But I really look at Callie as more of what I like to call like an insert guy, just because he's the guy you always see like, if a one gets shot early, if a guy gets caught up in his spot trying to get in, he's the guy that's willing to just fly down the field, fill the gap, and kind of help close the games out. But yeah, certainly Cody is huge as a defensive player for Infamous. And it's really funny. Cody reminds me a lot of Travis, who coaches the team, who was also himself an elite defensive player for, going on 20 seasons in the league.
Yeah, Cody is definitely kind of like Travis, except he's better at shooting left-handed. But yeah, Callie he's always been a phenom, man. Like Callie and J-Rab came up kind of out of the same area in DC. When we heard about Callie from knowing who J-Rab was, because we knew Steve Rabikoff, the original Rab. But yeah, we went to some practices with excessive around 2005-ish, mid part of the season, and this young kid was just dominating out there. He was looking really good, and it was Callie Rudolph. So we picked him up on excessive, and I think it was 2005 World Cup. We took second place. Maybe it was 6. I think it was second. I think it was 5. Might have been 06. Regardless,
yeah,
but me and Callie,
it was 5 because 6 would have been when the roster fell apart.
Yeah, then it was definitely 5. Yeah, it was definitely 5. And I think we took second place to Dynasty. We almost got in a team fight with Rage at that event. I broke my little toe and had to eat pills in order just to play the event. Cut a hole in my cleats. It was an eventful World Cup. But one of the things that I also put my foot into like a fire ant hive right before the finals. But these are all just other stories for another time. But one of the things that I remember from that event was that Callie Rudolph was like super legit. And I remember, I played on the line with him, and I'm started in the center, filtered up, in the back center, and then filtered up in the center. So when we still had the X. And yeah, just Callie was just really good on that D side, man. He was just hyper aggressive, really small, really athletic. He had the right mindset, really fun to hang out with. They called him Callie's, it's Kevin Callie Rudolph, but when he was younger, he looked like he was like a young kid from California. Okay, he had the haircut and the piercings, and so he just got the nickname Callie, and it just stuck. But I've always loved him since then, man. He's a really good dude, great family, he's a hard worker, and it was just good to see him kind of come back after having to deal with some family health issues. As strong as he's ever looked as part of that back line. So to me, he'd have to be in a little bit of the conversation. It's just tough with 2 guys from the same team. Something you and I and all the guys would have to discuss about as far as that situation is. But again, let's move on. Let's kind of talk a little bit about.
Why we're talking about Infamous. Yeah, like we're talking about Infamous. Let's jump into Breakout Player of the Year, just because I think they have a great candidate for that in Harrison Fry. The way I kind of look at the breakout player, this doesn't necessarily have to be someone that was like a terrible player last season and now they're good. I just more so look at it as a guy that came into the year and he had expectations that he just blew out of the water. And to me, like, I really think that's Harrison. I actually got to see him play at an open event on the East Coast towards right at the season opener. And right when I saw that event, right away I was like, okay, the league should be really scared. This guy is like on a completely different gear this year. But talk to me a little bit about like what you think for breakout play of the year. I mean, there's a ton of great candidates. I mean, whether you're talking about a guy like Cato Warner on Thunder, even someone like Jared Lackey with NRG, I think there's a lot of great players to look at.
Well, I'll start with Lackey just because I love Lackey. He's a great graphic designer as well too, even though I have been giving him a little bit of shit recently because it's not his decision. I'm like, I need you to make the names bigger and bolder and brighter on the back of these jerseys, bro, because I would like to give everyone their shine, but I can't read this black ass name on a dark ass jersey, and my eyes still work even though I'm getting old, but like, help me out, brother. And he'll be like, that's not my call. Anyway, but Lackey makes some really, because he's a graphic designer, makes a lot of these jerseys for people in the league. And he's a great paintball player. But as much as I love Lackey, I just don't think breakout play. And again, like you said, it's not like he sucked before and he's good now for any of these people. But I just think that Lackey's been on my radar for a long time. So at least for me and my vote, it would be very tough for me to, in any way, shape, or form, kind of put him in that category just because, he played for New York Extreme. He's kind of been around for a little bit. Like Lackey's, I mean, he's been in this game for a while. Like I've known how good and he'll have his points. Like I don't really feel, whereas a guy like whereas Cato Warner, Kaito Warner, I don't want his mom to get mad at me. Kaito is that it's he's a little bit more in the conversation for something like that. And then yeah, a guy like Harrison, because of how good and how quickly he's gotten to be kind of at that elite status. Look, there's 200 pro players ish in the league, right around there, right? And so, we use this word elite to describe at any given time a couple guys on each squad. Some teams obviously will have, the top, depending on where we're at right now. But if we just go to, let's just go down to Damage 7th, right? Aftermath's at 8th, Revo's at 9th, Thunder's at 10th, Diesel's at 11th. But I mean, even down to Diesel and Extreme, I mean, even New York Extreme at 12th place has a couple guys that occasionally played elite status. Now, just because you can play at elite status doesn't make you Ryan Greenspan or Alex Goldman, or again, just pick any of these dudes that have won these MVPs awards before. You are not quite yet elite. If you've never won a pro paintball tournament in the NXL, never won an MVP, like you are not elite status, but it's funny that I even had brought up New York Extreme because, they have a funny nickname for Alexander Burtnikov, Malloy. They call him the bar, as in like he set the bar and we all need to get to his level, which I was like, that's the greatest nickname that I've ever heard in the game, to literally call somebody the bar. But yeah, Alexander Burtnikov is elite. So even if he has a bad tournament or a couple bad games, like I don't care. It's Alexander Burtnikov, dude. He's a Golden Gun Award winner. He's literally one of the greatest players ever to play the game. So yes, and age will catch up with us all at some point in time, but he is not there yet. Like, so maybe if he has any stumble whatsoever, like,
I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say his dad was in
60-year-old Malloy, like he might still be pretty good. Like he might give you a good
60-year-old Malloy is probably gonna. It's like, dude, I remember was it Marty Bush told me one time when he had a good game and he wasn't even that old at the time, but he's like, even a rusty knife still can cut every now and then, and I'm like 100%. So yeah, there's a really good chance that Malloy will be 60 and still lethal because his dad was still pretty damn good in his 50s. Playing for the Russian old man team. And that dude's like a Russian veteran from like some gnarly war stuff and has some crazy stories, which I've heard. And I don't want to mess. I love his dad. Mitri, if you're out there, peace be unto you. But yeah, so it was, but yeah, absolutely, dude. So, but that's the thing with elite status. So I don't know, it's kind of one of those things. Breakout play of the year. Yeah. Harrison's getting there, man, because going back and rewatching all these points for Infamous, it was apparent watching it live. It was obvious while we were watching it go down. We had to talk about Harrison Fry a lot. And then going back and rewatching it, I was even more appreciative. And I don't want to be having to carry his goggles around in a semi truck. Like, Harrison, hold on, we got your goggles coming in. Beep, beep. Here you go, brother. All right, I'll put these on your head. Like I don't want it to get to that status for him. But that being said, I mean, he's getting really good, Quinn. Like he's getting really good. So he's a huge asset to
Yeah, and I think
to
that's
Infamous
big with
right
like the
now.
breakout thing is the breakout guy needs like I look at Harrison. I'll just be honest. Preseason, I'm like, this guy is maybe like top 70, top 60. Like he's solid, but he's not like the guy. To me, he's like a top 20 guy now. I mean, he's really, really
Yeah.
good. I mean, he's like what, probably 6 foot, 6'1". He's a pretty big guy. I mean, I see him as the one in the snake, the one in the Doritos, down the center. Like just does anything they need, and he does it like near elite level.
Yeah, yeah, he's showing his versatility. I played in the one he's played as the one on the snake side. He's played as the one on the D side. He's been a lead in both those situations. He's been a big reason why Infamous is looking like they could potentially win the series title. If Infamous wins World Cup, it's 16 points that separate first and second in the overall rankings. So Impact, Infamous, Dynasty, and Houston Heat going all the way to Dynasty at third place. If either Impact, Infamous, or Dynasty wins, no matter what the other teams do, they will win the series title. I can't remember the last time it's been that way with the top three teams. Heat's not far behind, but they're not win the World Cup. Doesn't matter what everyone else does, win the series title situation. But they're at 446. X Factor's at 428. And I do apologize. We did say we were going to talk about the series title right out the gate, but then I just got so interested in all this other stuff we were talking about. So my bad.
Well, I mean, this is a great time
so,
to talk because, I mean, again, we're doing a Team of the Year award. I think out of any year, this is like the hardest year I think there's ever been to just pick the best team. I mean, I feel like there's been years where it's, you can just go right away to the old trusty Impact's the best team there is line of thinking. But I mean, this year, like you said, this points race, when's the last time we had 3 teams that can hit a walk-off home run and take home the season title? I can't remember the last time we had something like that.
I can't remember. It's been the top 2 a couple times. I would have to go down the rabbit hole slightly to be specific. But as far as the top 3 teams and then Heat and also who knows, man? I mean, Impact has got a 10th, Infamous has an 8th, Dynasty has a 10th, Heat didn't make a Sunday. X Factor's had a 9th. The Russians have also not made a Sunday. I'm just going down the list right now. So I mean, Damage is 7th. Damage is ranked 7th with a 3rd place and 2 11ths. That's how crazy this year has been. So, and everyone that I sit down for an interview that's been around for a long time, because again, the haters, they're like, oh, again, the top teams just crush all these up and coming teams, and paintball is so stratified. And I'm thinking, bro, have you been watching any of these games? Like, it just doesn't. The evidence does not bear that conclusion. And so we are looking at a changing of the guard. We are looking at a situation where we have never had things this competitive in the past, where literally the last place team in the Pro Division can beat the first place team. It's always been the case, but back in the day, Quinn, when we were playing in the early parts of the NXL, you would have Dynasty just beating the brakes off Ultimate. And this is when there was no mercy rule, and you had like 15-minute halves, and you started with like 20-minute halves. And
the 20-point
score would be like 24-1. Yeah. Is that fun? Is that fun for anyone other than Dynasty? It's definitely not fun for Ultimate unless, it was just a little ridiculous, So Legacy never won a game that I can remember. It was bad. So the fact that we now have Uprising taking 8th at the last event, the Ironmen finally and they weren't to the bottom of the barrel, but they did have some changes. They made a Sunday. They took a 9th. Energy Elite with the 7th. Extreme's been all over the place. And then now with Energy Elite and Level, and then ML Kings, though the results have not looked great for the ML Kings. I do like the new roster that they have. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we have to repeat a lot of stuff because, it's a lot of this stuff is the same. But with the ML Kings, I just feel like that roster has underperformed. I don't know what else maybe they need a few more guys here or there. But it's been, I went and watched the ML Kings at the beginning of the year, and I just felt like they had more offensive firepower, but the 18th, 17th, and 16th. And they're close in some of these games. If I was ML Kings, if I was Charlie Givens right now, the dude that owns the team, another paintball patron, I'd be a little frustrated because I feel like they have enough firepower to be doing a little bit better, and seeing how some of these teams like, Level and Energy Elite are kind of showing up. But sometimes it's just the difference in a few
I mean, to be
points here or
honest, I
there.
look at them. I think it's coaching, honestly. When you look at a team like ML Kings, I mean, think if you're even looking at the rapidly emerging teams like LVL or Energy. What's the one thing they have? They have a fairly legitimate coach that we know has a high paintball IQ. And again, I'm not saying anything negative about the current ML Kings coaching staff, but I think they need a guy that can just come in and say, "This is how we're using these tools. This is how I need you to execute." Because like you said, I mean, on paper, they're a pretty good team. I mean, Kyle Berry's really good. Greg Montalva is really good. These are guys that should be going out there and playing well above the level we've seen. And of course, we've seen flashes of that. But, I think they're big. I mean, I think if they can pull a solid coach into their organization, they're suddenly, a competitive team to me.
So, when we're looking at the ML Kings, they're sitting at 116 points. AC Dallas is at 90.
I mean, it's not looking good.
No, it's not looking good. So, again, if I'm Charlie Gibbons and I own the ML Kings, I'm okay. We need to just save it here at Cup. We need to save it here at Cup, and then hope to little sweet 6-pound, 8-ounce baby Jesus that things will be better in the next season. But it's definitely, again, I'd just be frustrated. And if I'm AC Dallas, I don't know. AC Dallas's team has definitely they've gotten better. There are dudes that are producing offense on that team. But it is just very, very difficult in the top 20 teams. I mean, it is a keep what you kill league.
AC Dallas. I just actually did a piece for the NXL on this whole relegation story. Let's speculate a little bit on AC Dallas. I mean, it's looking pretty grim for them if you're talking about the relegation race. I mean, at 90 points, I mean, even, ML Kings haven't looked great. I mean, they still have a 26-point lead on them. And I mean, being that AC Dallas really hasn't placed above 16th this year, and they put in a 20th place. I mean, do you see a scenario where we don't see these guys get relegated? I mean, I kind of talked about it in the article a bit. I mean, they essentially need to be like, I think they have to get above 7th place, and the remaining 18th and 19th place teams have to be like basically 15th or worse for them to avoid relegation. I mean, that's a tall task.
Well, considering that both DMG and the ML Kings have not done better collectively than 13th, that is definitely a possibility as far as their placing is concerned. And then as far as AC Dallas's performance, we have to directly look. This would probably be a good time to start talking about brackets. So if you look at AC Dallas's bracket, there are no easy brackets in the Pro Division. We can talk about which bracket is easier based on who's played well recently. This is very much of what have you done for me lately sport, but it's all speculative. Sometimes we look at what could be the bracket of death, and then that is definitely not the bracket of death when things start playing themselves out of the tournament. So AC Dallas's bracket is the Ironman, AC Diesel, Aftermath, and Dynasty. And in that bracket, that's not the hardest bracket. In my opinion, that is not the hardest bracket. The Ironmen have been up and down this year. Diesel is also, difficult, but they didn't have the best performance at this last event. And then Aftermath, similar situation. I mean, Diesel took 14th at this last event. Aftermath took 12th. And Aftermath is the second-ranked team in your bracket. So, yeah, this is not the hardest bracket out there. There are no, other than Dynasty and the Ironman, I was going to say there's no world champions in this squad, but the Ironman, it's been a long time since the Ironman were world champs. And it took them 10 years to win an event. And it was last year in Vegas, and the team is slightly different than it was then. Look, I was on the Ironman for 6 years. Everyone always declares their biases. I'm biased towards the Ironman not sucking. I don't want the Ironman to suck because it erodes the work that was put in to keep that name relevant during the rebuild when I was on that team. But, that being said, it has not been the best year for the Ironman. 14th, 16th, and a 9th. They did look a lot better in their 3-1 performance in the prelims at the last event. They still had a -3 though, for their overall plus minus 26 points for and 29 against. They lost, and that -3 kind of was solidified by what happened in their loss to Uprising and Sunday. But that's that they could be a
for
tough team.
sure.
So anyway,
but we gotta be. I think we gotta be a little honest though too. Even in a
I'm
little
being
bit of a
honest,
down
dude.
year with some.
I'm
Well, I'm saying
I'm
even
being honest.
someone like you're talking
What
the
honesty
Iron
do you
Man.
want out of me?
Well, we're still looking at this bracket. You say it's not the hardest bracket, but let's be honest. Is there anyone on the roster for AC Dallas that's outperforming LJ Parrish, Jackson, Sloviak? I mean, these are legitimate guys who have, they can be in the conversation as good players. I mean, not to go too. They have Nikki McEvers, who's a great coach. I mean, she's been drawing up some of that kind of old school punch you in the mouth type of stuff. That's been, it seems like they're really buying into it. It's working. And then, obviously Dynasty is gonna. I think they'll come into Cup and dominate like we can expect. And I mean, Diesel has some great pieces. And I mean, they just added Grayson Gladstone. He's a really good young attacker that I think will fit really well into what they're doing. I just think that's a tough bracket. And if you're asking me, I truly don't see much of a scenario where AC Dallas can avoid relegation. Of course, like we said, ML Kings are down there, but I think it's going to be really tough for them to make their way in because I think ML King certainly has an easier prelim potential set. I mean, I think Uprising and Extreme are certainly a lot easier games than someone like the Ironmen and Diesel, in my opinion, at least. Obviously, with Heat at X Factor in their division as well, it's going to be pretty tough. But I can potentially see a scenario that the ML Kings go 2-2 and AC Dallas goes 0-4.
100%. Let's just talk real quick about, we're talking about guys on AC Dallas. We have to speak specifically about who we're talking about. So, I mean, there some offenses has become apparent on that team. The question when we're discussing the professional division is it enough? Logan Dyer, Chavez, Morales, Mason. I mean, there's been, the Lukaus. The Lukaus are bigger dudes with offensive minds. They're just big dudes. It's really hard for them to put themselves physically into positions where, they can be huge threats. Have they done it? Sure. Can they do it on a regular basis against the best players on Sunday? I don't know. Again, we always are trying to bring you guys some insight into this. And if you don't agree with me, guys out there, then prove me wrong. But I have seen enough offense, and it's gotten a little bit better where it would not surprise me if somehow they could win some games. Are they going to win enough games? Could they play a spoiler, ruin some guys' Sunday hopes, still miss Sunday? Possible. I don't know. But yeah, you're right. If we're going to be honest, yeah, dude, they're sucking hind titty here. These are dudes from Texas. They know how it goes. It's not looking good for AC Dallas, dude. If Paulie was sitting right here next to me, he'd be like, yeah, you're right. We need to get better. And they know that. So that's how it is up here. Like, if you can't be good enough to be, and Mike Kinnaman has said this too. He's like, step one is don't get relegated. Don't be 20th. We can build after that. Mm-hmm. And then seeing as how they were also on the bubble before, they are no longer on the bubble. But yeah, that's the issue when you lose your entire starting five and you have to rebuild with lower divisional players, then yeah, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be a long road. And they have not shown us enough. Again, 16th last and 17th. With the ML Kings, they've just, like you said, it's like the eye test. It's like, well, what are we watching here? As I say sometimes, is it a good look in a loss? And when I look at the capabilities that I see out of ML Kings, I'm like, okay, better looks here. Like, have they had great results? Absolutely not. I mean, they did beat AC Diesel by 3 in their last game, but they lost. They went 1-3 at the last event. DMG, dude, I like the guys on DMG, man. I've known Shane Howell since we played against each other years ago. I like the Boyums. I like Gerber. Gerber's a really dope dude. I like those guys. They work hard, but they have also underperformed, and they know that. They looked terrible at their home event in that open event that we had at Sacramento. They took 19th at this last event, lost every single game, and some of them were. And
I mean, I think that 13th in Philly, though, is really going to buoy them up because, I mean, again, they haven't been great this year, but that 13th they got at the Mid-Atlantic Major, I think, is going to be what saves them. Because even, I mean, you look at the season point total race, even with the poor season they've had, I mean, they still have a 42-point lead over AC Dallas. I mean, that means off that alone, you know what I mean? AC Dallas needs to place 5 places higher just to overcome, the deficit.
Bro, I don't want to use too much of our time here speculating on some crazy universe
Yeah.
that AC Dallas runs the table, because I don't think it's going to happen. But I would be lying if I didn't see improvement in some of the attackers on AC Dallas. Are they ready yet to
Yeah,
make
for
a run?
sure.
No, they're not. But yeah, I mean, again, it's like some people will be like, "Oh, dude, you guys are pumping these dudes up. They don't deserve to be pumped up." I'm like, go watch the goddamn games. Go watch the games. Go watch game 1 for AC Dallas at the beginning of this year, and then start to see some of the offensive moves that guys like Mason and Dyer are making in these pressure situations. Like, those are guys that, at least for AC Dallas, are emerging as threats. Do I think they're going to get
I mean, to be
relegated?
honest,
Hell
even
yeah.
like counterpunching,
Hell yeah.
even
They're going to
counterpunching. I
get
mean,
relegated.
Colt Lukow is getting pretty good as a counterpuncher in the middle. I mean, he's been a big gun off the break for them in the games we have seen this season. And it's kind of interesting to watch because, like you said, he certainly is a bigger guy, but I mean, he's been really working hard this year. He's been losing weight. He's been getting more athletic. I mean, you've seen it happen. I mean, this guy's pretty good at filling through the center of the field once he sees an opening. And I certainly think if you do look at a scenario that AC does avoid relegation, I think it does roll through, honestly, a guy like Colt Lukow just being a big gun off the break and closing games out through the middle.
I do agree with you. Like, there's a very little chance of them not getting relegated. I can't argue with that. That's a poor position to argue from but my point is that they don't have the hardest bracket based on previous
Oh, for
performance.
sure.
I mean, yeah, the Iron Men are. It's a team that won a tournament in the past year and a half. AC Diesel's tough, and Aftermath's tough, and Dynasty's badass. But I mean, with DMG,
But I don't know.
Revo,
It isn't crazy to think either. I mean, if Iron Man or Diesel were 1-3, would you be like wildly surprised either? I wouldn't be. I could certainly
no,
see
I
a
wouldn't
scenario
be.
they go 1-3.
I'm looking at these brackets and based again. So what have you done for what you keep what you kill? What have you done for me lately? That's how this sport works. And based on that situation, if I'm coaching one of these teams, I want to be in either bracket B or bracket C. I don't really want to be in bracket D, and I don't really and the bracket I really don't want to be in is I do not want to be in bracket A. Bracket A has Impact, the number 1 team right now. They have Tampa Bay Damage, a team that just cut John Woodley and is taken 11th place twice with a bunch of legends and former world champs on the team, dudes that get paid to play this game. They're going to be out for blood.
And if you've talked to Jason lately, Jason is like a man possessed, like pissed off, and he's ready to just
all those dudes
destroy everybody at World Cup.
All those dudes are. Those dudes are going to be bonus balling people. They're going to be talking shit. Like, I can't wait to watch every single Damage game at Cup. They're going to be out for redemption at Cup. That would be like one of the last teams I would want to play at World Cup is Tampa Bay Damage, regardless of how they've underperformed these past couple events. Thunder was murdering everyone in the prelims these first 2 events, and they were terrible at this last event. They're coming down this weekend to practice Aftermath. They're going to be up in Los Angeles. And I also another team that, I feel like if Thunder could wake up and realize what, they also could fall apart at Cup. I'm a little scared for them because that's a team on the edge right now mentally. And I don't, nothing against them, but when you have these young up and coming teams and you get a situation where things are going really well and all of a sudden you have disaster strike. Okay, what do you do next? Big moment for Thunder. And again, I really am looking forward to watching those games and seeing how they prevail, but they're in a tough division because who are the other 2 teams in their division? 4th and 5th place is Level and Energy Elite, the teams that have been on the rise. And so you have a really hungry Level, feeling the flow, feeling good. Energy Elite, same thing, feeling the flow, feeling really good, feeling the vibes right now, coming off these awesome performances that they've had. And that's bracket A. So I do not want to be in bracket A. And then bracket D, the last bracket, is Houston, Heat, and X Factor as your first 2 teams. And then New York Extreme, who loves to play the spoilers. They all seem to always go 2-2.
It's been getting red hot.
They've been getting hot. Exactly. They've been getting red hot. And then you have Uprising that just came off a pretty solid performance.
Is like the professional spoiler team. Like, what do they do every World Cup? They somehow win games they shouldn't. They beat teams and they ruin top teams' chances at getting through to the finals and winning Cup. I mean, they're like professional at it at this point. And I mean, even,
100%.
We talked about already the ML Kings in the last spot. I mean, you got to think a guy like Kyle Berry or Greg Montava is looking at like, hey, I might not be a pro next year. That's got to be lighting a fire that they want to say, I'm going out there and smashing everybody.
100%. So then and again in the other two divisions, brackets, however you want to call it, in B and D or 2 and 3, then you have in 2/B, you got Infamous and the Russians. And look, everyone in all the interviews done, like we all like, dude, the Russians, I hated the Russians back in the day because they got good fast, and we were like, who the hell are these Russian guys? And I was raised on Red Dawn and Rocky 4, and I did not want to be the and they were used to play in pajamas and not be able to shoot left-handed, and I would get in arguments with their owner, and they would give me this ridiculous thing about, shooting left-handed this way, and I'm like, okay, well, why don't you shoot right-handed that way? That's a longer story. But over time, I have found an incredible respect for the Russians, the guys that have been on that team for a long time, their coaching staff, the work they put in, how they've transformed the game. It's very impressive. Kirill and his boys over there, like, I have nothing but respect for those guys, and they are legends in the game. But we haven't seen Kirill, we haven't seen Karslev, and the fact that they were second up until this last underperformance that they had. But the fact is, they had to pick up a couple of the Wild Dogs, and hey, nothing against the Wild Dogs. We're talking about dudes that are boot rookies in the pro game that made a splash at World Cup last year because Uprising couldn't make it. It's just not the same level, man. And again, prove me wrong. I'm not saying anything against your talent. I'm talking about your experience. So if we're measuring things here, the fact that they've done as well as they have is just a testament to that program. But it's not the same Russians, and that's just anyone's lying that says different. And then you have,
I mean, to be honest,
Infamous.
they just come down to, they just had a short roster. I mean, you've seen it at events. A lot of time about like Sunday, these guys are dead already, and they still have, a whole set of games. And that's not a comment on conditioning or anything. That's just the fact of they are one of the few teams that just runs 5 pure guys, basically an entire event, and they don't really switch. That's why, again,
not
like
ideal.
you said, obviously the guys like Diego and Andres who came in from the Wild Dogs, they are rookies. But to me, these are guys that can come in and do these kind of crazy moves that we see Russian Legion do. And that gives, if you give Malloy 1 or 2 little breaks throughout the event like that, and you get a really fresh Malloy, or, just in general, a fresh
Quinn.
Russian roster with a fresh Smotrov, you're looking at a dangerous team.
The Russian, I'm not saying you're wrong, but the Russians lost 3 games in the prelims at the last event to take 13th place. They had a -3. They lost to AC Diesel. They beat the MO Kings by 5. And then they lost to the Ironman by 1, and they lost to Dynasty by 4. I mean, if you have the core starting lineup of the Russians for the past, if COVID doesn't happen, the Russians are going to be contending with the best teams, period. It will be the Russians and Impact and whatever, Heat, all these X Factor. Who knows what happens if COVID doesn't happen? But the fact that the Russians have not had Kirill or Karslev, and as we well know, you lose one dude, and not that Waring or the Wild Dogs, again, we're talking about elite, right? Like, that's what we're talking about here. That is again, the hinge of this conversation. So I love the Russians.
Yeah, I mean, you're taking guys away that, I mean, these are guys that have been the same roster since 2012. You know what I mean? That hurts when you lose those guys.
Yeah, so the Russians are just not the same, and they know it. Everyone knows it. It's not like we're lying if we don't say that. And then with
absolutely.
Revo, but Revo is an interesting wild card here for Cup because I think they're gonna get Frank back. He had foot surgery. Omar had a kid. He'll be back. Dan Zaleski was brutalized.
Are we going to see the same Omar? That man lost a finger.
Did he lose how did Omar lose a finger? I heard. I kind of heard about this.
One of his fingers got. I heard it got caught in a table saw and he lost his finger.
Jesus Christ! When did this happen? Was this super recent? I had heard
right before Chicago.
Wait, hold on. I heard he had a kid. That's why he couldn't make it to Chicago.
Oh, he had a kid, but he also
lost his finger
in that process as well. So
Jesus Christ,
that could
Which
have
finger?
helped the whole process.
I've mangled this hand, and you can see that this hand, like this pinky, doesn't bend anymore. Like, so I've mangled some hands, but I have my fingers. But as somebody that's like mangled both my hands before,
I think he lost like half of his index finger. So I mean, that's a pretty important finger for paintball.
Okay, well, they just proved that they can do really well without O'Mara. And
Yeah.
O'Mara is
No, but I'll
baller,
say
dude.
this. You know
O'Mara,
why? 2 words.
what?
Chris Shear. Chris Shear is the
Yes.
next elite player in the NXL. That guy is
Okay,
so good.
Quinn, so here's a good example of us discussing breakout players of the year. Okay, if you had to vote, okay, before World Cup, if you had to vote right now, Chris Shear or Harrison, who is it? Because to me, those
Honestly,
are the
I'm
two
picking
dudes.
Chris because Chris came from a bad NRG roster, and he is arguably one of the best Dorito players of this year so far. I mean, he's been dominant.
Yeah, Chris Shear has been so good, dude. Chris Shear is I mean, he's getting to be elite. I don't like to throw elite around out. Yes, he's been elite, but I don't know if he is elite. Like we said before, there's you playing at elite status for a little bit, and then there's you being elite, which means that you are one of the best 20 to 30-ish dudes in the entire sport for a long period of time. And then if you have a couple bad ones, then we'll be like, oh, who cares? That's an uncharacteristic. That's when you hear us say things like, oh, look at this uncharacteristic early death or this uncharacteristic this or that. That's because you deserve for us to say that was uncharacteristic because you've been straight a murder fest for the past 10 years. So, like we'll give you that bad game or that bad tournament. It's going to happen. It's like Davey Williamson said in Heroes for a Day. I think it was, I don't know, all the documentaries over the years, but he was like, yeah, Oliver got worn out that tournament. Think anyone noticed? Dynasty still won the tournament. It's like Oliver very, very, very rarely had a bad event, but it happens even to the gods in our sport. So, but yeah, dude, Shear is on his way. Shear has been
I don't know about
incredibly
you.
impressive.
I watched Chris Shear go toe to toe this last event against Fedorov, and he seemed to get the best of him in that heat matchup. So he's a guy to me. Like again, you said this before, and you always said you mentioned Heroes for a Day when Bob Long said consistency is the measure of greatness. He's been consistently good all year, and every single event he's better. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he goes out to World Cup and racks up another 55 kills. Like I just think he's that
There's
guy.
a nuance to that. There's a nuance to that though, because it's yes, consistency is definitely the measure of greatness, but also I don't really care how many ninths and when all is said and done and you finish playing, you're not gonna give a shit about the ninths and the tenths that you took. Like you'll remember those. You're gonna it's all and because it's all about the high watermarks, right? It's all about the win. So what I said on that hill was like we need to go out there and we need to ride on the reckless edge and prepare for defeat, but expect excellence because I'm paraphrasing. Obviously, I didn't memorize this thing, but because it was in the moment. But the thing is like, is you have to go out and win tournaments. This team is built to win tournaments. And that's why I love teams like Houston Heat because, okay, they don't like you talk to a guy like Ryan Moorhead. Ryan Moore doesn't give a shit if they took an 11th place. Like I literally after that happened, I was getting on the airplane the next day. Who is there? And I love these guys so much. And I've just really treasure all the time I've ever spent with these dudes because it is so fun. But it was Ryan Moorhead and Chad George. So literally after we finished the event and I get to the Orlando airport, who's there? And it's Chad George and Ryan Moorhead. So we're both there early. So now we're sitting there kind of just drinking some beers, talking about the tournament. And Ryan was like, yeah, man, you know what? We sucked. It is what it is. We're going to be better. I promise you we're going to do better at the next event. Mark my words. And sure enough, they won the next event. But but with a guy like Chris Shear, he is really clocking in at such a high level of performance for Revo that and I think that he was one of the big reasons that even though they had lost Frank, who is a bowling ball or a wrecking ball, however you want to describe it, on that D side for them and wherever kind of they want to put him. And then also no O'Mara. But it was interesting. And multiple guys stepped up for him, though. I mean, Zupa carried a lot of weight. I mean, when those guys finally got knocked out, like half of them were limping off. I mean, Dan had his front.
Chris went to the hospital. He was like dead.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yes. Chris died. Chris had it was to the limit, dude. It was incredibly impressive performance. So yes, like Chris Shear is definitely in that. Hey, you need to watch this guy if you're playing against Revo, and you really need to be concerned. Or we should be concerning ourselves with him potentially being that. I don't know. But again, this is why World Cup's so important. I mean, if Chris Shear shows up and plays lights out at Cup, even if Revo doesn't do that well, maybe he wins Breakout Player of the Year. If Harrison goes real deep, though, it's going to make the conversation really kind of pretty interesting. And then there's still some other guys that could be in that category.
If Harrison goes out and gets 65 kills and Infamous wins, we're probably talking about him as icon of the year at that point. You know what I mean? But
That's true.
let's
That's what I'm
let's jump
saying.
to something else here. Let's jump to something else here quick. I want to play like a mini game with you. Let's
do
go
it.
through the kind of teams I'm looking at for breakout team of the year. And I'm just let's do
Okay.
a quick like 5-second pretender or contender. Just give me an answer for each one of the kind of teams that I'm looking at right now about this.
Wait, hold
Thunder,
on. Are we talking
contender or
about
contender?
Hold on. Contender for this award or like contender for the tournament?
Let's just say contender in the pro league in general for the World Cup. Like this is a team that can make a run type of thing. Just because I think it'd be interesting to see your viewpoints to where I stand on it. Do you look at Seattle Thunder, pretender or contender?
I mean, Thunder has their hands full at this last event. If I was Thunder and I was coaching them, I know those guys that really like Thunder, I'd be embarrassed at how they performed at this last event. They have a massive moment for them at Cup with the bracket that they're in. Impact, damage, energy, and level. So you have the two teams that are coming up. They stole, again, everyone's thunder, no pun intended, in the beginning of the year because they became the big team that everyone was like, oh my God, who are these guys, right? And then all of a sudden at the event where they, step on their toes and underperform, they just never played that layout well. Then Energy, Elite, and Level step up, and they have to deal with Damage, who's hungry for it, and Impact, who's, on paper, the best team in the league. So I still think they're a contender. I would not call them a pretender just based on how good that they are when they're on. And with this layout, I think they have a chance, but I need to kind of see a little bit more of how this layout's going to play out to really, truly kind of bring that in. But I feel like that's a team that we'll see what they're made of at Cup for sure. But I would not call them, I think a contender. I won't call them pretender.
Let's pick, I got two more for you then. What I think is probably the most argumentative, not even talking about who they are, just in general. NYX, pretender or contender?
So New York Extreme,
I mean, you got to remember, Maddie, this is a team that, they didn't play great last event. And at the same time, they are walking people off the field, shooting them. Is this a team that thinks they might be a little bit better than they actually are?
You know what? I'm just gonna say this because I hope it lights a fire under their ass. I really like the guys from New York Extreme, but you're a pretender until you prove otherwise. So get your shit together, dial it in, stop making the same mistakes you keep making, and get better at this game because they have so much promise. Like obviously, I know Rich well, and we discuss things, and then to see how long that these guys have like got by on talent alone, and to see where they could go. So I feel like for the future, they're contenders. As it stands from what I've seen out of you guys so far, pretenders. So, live your rhetoric, dude. Live your rhetoric. You want to be the best, then, act as if. So it's kind of one of those situations where they're in a division where they have a lot to prove here. This is not the hardest division at World Cup, potentially. Again, you never really know. But I'm just going to say pretender because I feel like, again, as a coach, like I could go up to Nicky Cuba, slap Nicky in the face, tell him he's garbage and he's playing like complete shit and he needs to get better and he's an embarrassment to the Cuban name and his family. And he would be like, oh, and he would just go out there and
shoot seven guys the next
point.
And
he'll shoot 7 guys the next point. There's other dudes that if I go up and even say like, hey man, you really are sucking right now and I need you to step it up and not even be that harsh to him, they would just clam up, go into a cave, and they would be terrible the rest of the event. New York Extreme is a team where I feel like they're down to rise to the occasion. So yeah, as always, as everything in this sport, you are definitely a pretender until you prove that you can make Sundays on a regular basis. And yeah, sure, they can beat teams, so they can beat some of these top teams. They can't seem to do it on a regular basis. And it was also sad for them at this last event to go out and beat Thunder by 6 and look really good in that first game, and a team that ended up having a bad event, and then literally lose every single game after that. They lost to Infamous by 4. They played an 18-point game against Young Upstarts, Energy Elite. On paper, that's a team they should be beating the shit out of. They lost that game by 2, and then they lose to Uprising by 5 in another really high-scoring game. I mean, and what was their excuse in those games? Well, give me the excuse.
Nothing.
They don't have an excuse. So Pat Kraft, Harris Hussein, live your rhetoric, kid. Like be the Kings of New York. Like be as good as you want, be as good as you say you are, because I think you're that good. And if I believe in you, believe in yourselves. I really feel that New York Extreme continues to underperform. It's frustrating for me because I really like
what
those
point
guys.
do we get to with NYX where we just write them off? I mean, how many? We've been saying this for what, 2-3 years now. I feel like we've been saying
We have, but
NYX. This is
not
their
yet
year.
though. Not yet, because they're still in there, and honestly, the way it is, like, they're a pro team, dude. As long as they want to pay the entry fee and show up until they get relegated, I mean, if they can, and they've beat the Russians before, they've beat they've beat a couple other top teams, so has it happened on a regular basis? Absolutely not. Do I constantly have Bo Milo come up and sit there and Saturday afternoon on the webcast as they go 2-2? It's become a joke in and of itself. Oh, here we go. We got Bo. Hey, welcome. And I love Bo. Bo, hey, welcome to the show. You guys went 2-2 again. Tell me what needs to happen in order for you guys to make it on to Sunday. And he'll be like, oh, Maddie, we need Thunder needs to lose by 2. And then and then he goes down the list of the stuff that needs to happen. So as it stands right now, just to light a fire under their underperforming asses, I would say pretender for New York Extreme. Again, boys, prove me wrong. I would love for you to prove me wrong. Please show up and win World Cup. That would be great for the sport.
Let's give you one more then for this that I think is probably the hardest one to just kind of determine, because I feel like they're so erratic, but they have so many weapons, so many tools. Aftermath, contender or pretender?
I feel like so again, they're in the same bracket as Dynasty, Diesel, Ironman, AC Dallas. I don't know if Aftermath has the firepower to make a run right now to win a tournament. I mean, Aftermath did make it into the semifinals at the second event. They took 4th. If we go back to that performance, they lost to Impact by 5. So it wasn't a close game. They went 2-2 to make it on. They beat AC Diesel by 2. They beat up on the Russians by 5. They looked really good there. I think I feel if Aftermath, we'll see how this layout ends up playing. If this layout does if it's an offensive layout, they just keep losing bodies, but when Mike puts their feet to the fire and makes them play offense, they have had certain guys rise to the occasion. When you do go man for man, we beat them up a little bit, and they have kind of I feel like they've hamstrung themselves occasionally by playing a little too defensive occasionally. But when they kind of have started to push the issue, they seem to thrive in those moments. Unger did not have good practices. He ended up playing well as the first attacker on the Snake side. I think Halbert can play his ass off playing as an aggressive guy. I think Erickson's great on the offense. Pinky is good at offense. Like, I've started to see really good things. Barrett, Barrett likes to throw kind of down like an anchor occasionally because he's a great gunfighter, and he's a smart guy. So he wants to kind of feel things out. But when Barrett has to play offense, he also plays very well. So I think when you go man for man and you look at that team, and if this is an offensive field, which we see mostly, and again, we'll see in the next couple weekends exactly how it develops, but I would not say that they're a pretender. I think that, but if they play deep, if they continue to, if their go-to knee-jerk reaction is defense, inner point. I'm not talking about game plans, because I know that's not how they're setting their game plans up. But if their knee-jerk reaction when they lose a couple bodies or show a couple bodies, when the scramble happens, it's kind of be less aggressive than their opponents, that's just not going to work for them. They're not going to continue to progress. And then as far as long-term is concerned, unless like the world shuts down Mike's paintball factory and Mike all of a sudden stops caring about paintball as much as he does, like, Aftermath will be relevant eventually. It's inevitable that Mike Hinman will have a team that is going to be contending. So 100% contender in the future. Right this second, I just want to see a little bit more consistent aggression out of that lineup.
I have to agree. Every point. So we don't take up too much time tonight, because like you said, I think when me and you get in a room and start talking, we could probably talk for 15 hours if we had to.
We probably could. We probably could feel like a full day.
Let's talk about one more kind of thing that I think is an interesting thing that I like to look at, because I feel like a lot of the awards in the past that we've seen over the years of paintball, no one really touches on it. Coach of the Year. Again, as we've seen with the points race this year, that is a really kind of heated battle to me in my mind. I mean, of course, you have like the stalwarts like Ryan Brand, Lemansky, Todd Martinez, of course. But really, like, Kevin Bredauer, Skinny K from Dynasty, he's really looking good. I mean, he's been a great coach in the past with Ironman. He's really good now. I mean, the one thing I think that makes a good coach is he's able to A, call good plays, and B, manage the roster. And the personalities on Dynasty. There's a lot of strong personalities in that roster, and Kevin's really good at keeping them all level-headed and on the same page. I mean, when you look at the kind of coach of the year race, who do you look at as that guy that's kind of emerging?
SK absolutely has to be in the equation because if you look at the coaching, to me, the two coaches that have risen up as far as coaches of the year is concerned, and then we have to, again, this is so contingent on what happens at Cup, though, because if some of these younger teams continue to have really big years, they have to be at least in the conversation for that, because there's coach of the event. Obviously, that award gets given out every year, or every event, and that's typically the coach that wins the event, because how could we give it to anyone else unless there's some crazy turn of events? But let's just go down the list real quick. Impact is Dave Baines. Dave Baines is, I love Dave Baines. Dave's a really smart guy. I play with him on Cat Factory, currently in 10-man. He's always coming up to me and asking, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? That's kind of like a lot of the I deal with a lot of the coaches in that way, but he's a great coach for Impact, and the results show. They had a really tough performance in this last one, losing to Revo in the wild card match, so they're going to be hungry at Cup. But as far as like coach of the year is concerned for the Iconic Awards, I mean, he's been doing that for a long time. He has to be a nominee no matter what, most likely because of the number one team. If they win World Cup, we have to make a strong consideration considering how bad they did at the last one. So we'll see. Infamous, Travis Lemansky, a little bit more in the consideration here. I mean, he's really had to coach the shit out of that team because he's also the general manager too. Same with Dave, though. And that's another part of it that a lot of people don't understand, is that there are the X's and O's, and there's dealing with your personalities, but then there's player management and acquisition. And so when you have a guy like Travis and you have a guy like Dave, that's a little bit different than, say, Houston Heat. So, but Todd is also in the conversation as well, too, because if Todd shows up at Houston Heat and they win World Cup, like, we got to be talking about Todd as well, too, because why? Brand new team, right? And that's a really big issue. Same thing with SK. So that's the situation where it's like, if I'm going to wait versus Dave and Travis, who have been guiding these ships for a long time. Again, this is why a lot of what happens who I feel should get it, comes down to World Cup. But I feel like we have to wait Skinny Kevin Bredauer, and Todd Martinez for Heat and Dynasty, respectively, a little bit more, because they just haven't had a lot of time to work with really difficult teams to coach. I mean, Houston Heat is a team full of superstars that get paid to play this game, and they have had a lot of different coaches. They haven't had like a pro coach in a while, because it's mostly been, either Sam Monville or, it was either Sam or Randy or Ryan Smith. So since Jason Trozen, who's now the commissioner of the league, they haven't really had like a dedicated coach for a while. And so they've had these guys kind of trading off, like, oh, I'm going to retire, I'm going to be the coach. It's like, okay, Sam, you're still really good. Oh, I'm going to retire, I'm going to coach. Okay, Ryan, you're still like, now you're in the starting lineup again. I feel like, and that's another guy as far as like up and coming, or not up and coming, but, kind of as far as players we need to put in some sort of category potentially, like Ryan Smith might be one of those guys. Again, you and I could just continue to go crazy on this, but as far as for this last question before we sign off, Quinn, I do feel that, that Todd's got to be in there depending on what they do at Cup. SK absolutely has to be in there. Dynasty is notoriously hard to coach. I still joke about how I would pay an admissions fee to roll up to their practice and watch what used to be Oliver, Ryan, and Alex just bicker and argue for 6 hours straight, it was just hilarious. And now it's, so now you add Marcelo into that mix with Ryan, and, you got all these different dudes in there that are trying to get their, put their opinions into it. And now here you have SK and Yosha's the voice of reason, and then SK is the coach trying to figure out all of this madness. And then now Todd goes into Houston Heat with all these legends and all these world champs, a team that's won 2 World Cups, and now he helps guide them to, you know, first place finish in the second event that he coached him. So I feel I'd be waiting towards SK or Todd right now, but it really does because, you know, to Travis and Dave also have to be, I feel like, nominees as well too. But then also we have like the Robbie Goldsmiths of the world as well too. So I don't know. It's going to make Cup is going to make all these questions, Quinn, super interesting. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me, man. I feel like we could keep going. We got to get you back on the show again soon, because you know, it's just 2 paintball dudes just kind of chopping it up. It's really, I love these conversations. So anyone you want to thank,
I'm
or
sure
anything
we'll
you want,
talk more soon.
Yeah, oh for sure. But anything you want to pump before we sign off?
So obviously, iconicpaintball.com is my site. I look a little bit more in depth on stories and stuff. If you want to go over and spend some time reading, watching old videos from the 2000s, give it a look. Again, Maddie, I've told you this like 20 times now. I always love to thank you because you were a huge inspiration in my desire to write and kind of cover stories and tell the stories that matter to me. So I've always loved to thank you, and really, I thank the whole Go Sports crew as well, because I watch hundreds of hours of it a year. I love every second of it. They have great coverage. Make sure you guys catch it at the World Cup.
Quinn, thank you so much, dude. You're a blessing to the sport. I love what you're doing with Iconic Paintball. It's going to be super fun to figure out who's going to win all these awards, as we've just been discussing. And yeah, World Cup, it's just a couple weeks away. So stay tuned. We got more shows coming at you next week. We're working on 4 Sundays, another documentary, year-long documentary series. And yeah, paintball, as always, is going to get crazy in the off season too. So yeah, the biggest event of the year, Cup, is coming up. Quinn, again, thank you so much. Guys, we will see you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in.
See you later.
Come on, man. 54! Keep pushing, yeah? Keep pushing.